Thank you for holding this hearing today, and Ranking Member Heidkamp. As we've all been discussing, we know there's a retirement crisis in this country, that across the board, wages are flat, fixed costs are going up, people can't save for retirement, pensions are disappearing, and that means more reliance than ever on Social Security. For almost 2/3 of seniors, Social Security makes up the majority of their income in retirement. And for 22 million Americans, Social Security is literally the only thing standing between them and poverty. When a parent dies or is incapacitated, grandparents often step up, and this can create a huge additional burden on the family for people who are already struggling because of the financial crisis. In these cases, Social Security is a double lifeline for both the grandparents and for the kids. Today, about 98% of children in America are eligible for survivor's benefits when a working parent dies. So I want to ask you about this, Senator Conrad. You are the principal author of the Bipartisan Policy Center's report on retirement security, and in the report, you propose several expansions of Social Security for low-income seniors. But you also propose expanding Social Security survivors' benefits, something not many people have talked about from this report. Can you tell us a little bit about why the survivors program, how it currently works, and what your proposed expansion would entail?
Well, if we remember our history, until 1981, we had a survivor's benefit in Social Security for kids who stayed in college until they were 22. If they were in an approved college, they would continue to get benefits. This also applied to those who qualified for disability. And this made a major difference to thousands, tens of thousands of kids who were survivors, tens of thousands of people who had a disability, that they were able, if they stayed in school, to get an additional Social Security income. However modest it was, it made a big difference. In the work of this commission, we agreed on a bipartisan basis, and again, 18 of the 19 commissioners agreed with the recommendations, that we ought to reestablish this benefit for survivors and those affected by disability. You know, if we think about the transition, Professor Mead has been talking about, quite rightly, others from the dais, we're going through this dramatic economic change. We've got to be sensitive to that. And, you know, I think about when we were growing up, high school was a minimum requirement. I mean, right? If you didn't graduate from high school, your prospects probably weren't very good. You know, I have to say, now we look at society, if you don't have a college education, your prospects aren't very good. In fact, I've just been talking to some young people who didn't finish college. They can't get a job interview, even for things they're actually qualified for, because they don't have that certificate. So I think this is something we've got to adjust to.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that, and I want to be mindful of the time, but I understand, Senator Conrad, you were actually a beneficiary of this program?
Well, I was. And, you know, when I was going to school, I remember getting that check, and I tell you, it made a world of difference. Yeah. I was going to school out in California, and I remember very distinctly that green check that would arrive once a month and really made it possible for me to be in college and complete school.
And you think about overcoming the loss of a parent is devastating for any child, but loss of the income and savings shouldn't also destroy a family's financial security and a child's chance to go to college. This is a problem that's going to get worse in the years to come. Last year, for the first time since 1993, life expectancy in America decreased. And there are a number of reasons for that, but one is that tens of thousands of Americans are dying of opioid overdoses every year. And many of the victims of these overdoses leave children behind, and often grandchildren are the ones who step in to help. So let me just ask one more question here. Senator Conrad, it seems to me that given this decline in life expectancy and the increase in deaths from opioid overdoses, shoring up the survivors program may be more important than ever. Do you agree?
Well, I do, and I made that argument to the commission, and others on the commission made some of the points that you're making now. It was very interesting, and again, one of the things that was most interesting was how bipartisan this particular discussion was in the commission. Some of the most prominent Republicans on the commission felt strongly we ought to restore this benefit. And I was very pleased that we agreed to do so.
I am pleased that you did as well, and glad to try to highlight your good work on this. You know, my view is we should be talking about expanding Social Security across the board. But we also ought to be able to agree that it is long past time to expand survivors' benefits to age 22. Children who've lost their parents need to have a chance to be able to build a future for themselves without destroying the finances of their surviving parent or of their grandparents and others who step in to take care of them. So thank you very much for your work. Thank you for the report on this, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.